Welcome and thank you very much for your valued presence in this class. As you know, in this class, we are going to deal with Nissim Ezekiel's poem Background Casually. I'm sure you must have studied it. My purpose is to run through it as fast as possible. I have divided the class into 5 parts. In the first part, I'll discuss about Nissim Ezekiel, a Jewish poet. He needs no introduction. As you know, he was a key figure in Indian English poetry, post-colonial, especially post-colonial literature, and his Jewish background and living in Bombay basically comes as a theme of a lot of his poems. And the second thing is that if I were to introduce the poem Background Casually, it was published in 1976 in his famous collection, Hymns in Darkness. The P is missing, and it's a significant autobiographical poem, and it's deeply personal and reflective. And the poem, it can be divided into 3 parts. In the first part, he speaks about his birth and his childhood. Then he moves on to his adulthood life in England, then returning to his homeland, and his alienation and trying to find a sense of purpose and his identity. So ultimately, as an Indian, a Jew, and a poet, so there is also a conflict between what you may call modernity and tradition, and quest for meaning and purpose in life. It's a kind of an existential poem along with an autobiographical. And I will just run through the poem after this fast. As I told you, the first part, if you look at that, he speaks about how he was born and how he studied in school. He was a Jew, he studied in a Roman Catholic school, and among them, and also the Muslims hurt him. The Hindus also hurt him. So he was a kind of a what you may call a easy target for all people, both all Christians, Muslims, and Hindus. That is the first part he speaks about. Then he moves to England. He says poverty, poetry, and philosophy, three things with him. And he again struggles there in a different land. He was always treated as an outsider. And what happens is that he later finds a job in a ship. And he touches upon various philosophies, ideologies, his relationship. And subsequently, he comes back to India. And he says that, again, it's a kind of an introspection and resolution. Then finally, he accepts an Indianness and settles there. If you look at the themes, major theme is theme of alienation. Initially, due to his religious identity, then he speaks about his personality, identity and belonging, whether it's in India or Britain, wherever. He comes to a kind of a resolution and settles in India. And existential crisis. What is the purpose? Actually, this we can find in Kamala Das also a sense of what you may call existential crisis running through. And the style, if you look at it, it's written in free verse, very colloquial language, direct, speaking on the realities. And as I told you, it's what you may call a speak of Indianness. What is it to be a Jew in India? Now we just go to the poem and just run through it as fast as possible. Uh, Yes, it's a long poem. I'll just run through it in case they ask you from this. A poet rascal clown was born, the frightened child who would not eat or sleep, a boy of meager born. He never learned to fly a kite. His borrowed top refused to spin. I went to a Roman Catholic school, a mugging Jew among the wolves. So ultimately, first he speaks about his birth, what kind of a person he was. He was thin. Then his schooling in a Roman Catholic school. He was a mugging Jew among the wolves. So they may ask you, who was the mugging Jew among the wolves? It's Nissim Ezekiel. They told me I had killed the Christ. That year I won the scripture prize. So ultimately, there is a kind of a winning in that. A Muslim sportsman boxed my ears. I grew in terror of the strong, but undernourished Hindu lad. So he was growing terror both of Muslims and Hindus. Their propositions always wrong, repelled me by passivity. One noisy day, I used a knife. So ultimately, he started to rebel. At home on Friday nights, the prayers were said. My mortals had declined. I heard of yoga and of Zen. Could I perhaps be a rabbi saint? So ultimately, his existential crisis, his rebellion with religion comes up. The more I searched, the less I found. Then that's the first part ends. 22. Time to go abroad. First, the decision, then a friend. To pay the fare. So he was really poor. Philosophy, poverty, and poetry. Three companions. So they may ask you which were the three companions Nissim Ezekiel speaks about. It's philosophy, poverty, and poetry. Were shared my basement room. The London seasons passed me by. I lay in bed 2 years alone. Then a woman came to tell my willing ears, I was the son of man. So ultimately, it may be his romantic relationship, we do not know. I knew that I had failed in everything, a bitter thought. So again, a sense of alienation and find what is the purpose. So in an English cargo ship, taking French guns and mortar shells to Indochina, scrubbed the decks and learned to laugh again at home. So he started working. How to feel at home, he returns, was the point. Some reading had been done, but what had I observed except my own exasperation? All Hindus are like that, my father used to say. When someone talked too loudly or knocked at the door like the devil, they hawked and spat. They sprawled around. So his observation, I prepared for the worst. So that's the third phrase. Married, changed jobs, and saw myself a fool. The song of my experience sung. So reference to Blake. I knew that I was yet to sing. My ancestors among the caste were alien crushing seeds for bread. The hooded bullock made his sound. One among them fought and taught, a major bearing British arms. He told my father sad stories of Boer War. I dreamed that fierce men had bound my feet and lands. The later dreams were all words. I did not know that words to betray, but let the poems come, and lost the grip on things of the worldly price. So ultimately, he speaks, listens to a lot of stories, and he starts to write. I would not suffer that again. I looked about me now, tried to formulate a plainer view. The wise survive and serve to play the fool, to cash in on the inner and outer storm. So that's a very powerful line. The wise survive and serve to play the fool, to cash in on the inner and outer form. The Indian landscape sears my eyes. I have become a part of it, to be observed by foreigners. So ultimately, he speaks of his Indianness. They say that I am singular. Their letters overstate the case. I have made my commitments now. This is one, to stay where I am. So he decided to settle in India where he was born, as others choose to give themselves in some remote backward place. My backward place is where I come from. So that is how he ends the poem. So he speaks about his own background casually, about his birth, his growing up as an adult, and finally his old age settling in India. So there are some MCQs. I hope this was useful. I'll see you in the next class. Until then, take care, study hard. Bye bye.